Well done, Halifax. Well done. It was a nice game last night. All reports are that there was no booing at the women's hockey game between the Canadians and Americans, and the Americans were well received in the as they clashed for the fourth of a 5-game rivalry series. They play another game tomorrow night in PEI. The U.S. leveled the series at 2 wins apiece with a 2-win shutout victory in front of 9,200 at Scotiabank Centre. And again, we talked about this yesterday quite a bit about would people boo or not boo, and I think that it's excellent. And by the way, I'm not taking any credit. I'm not saying this to try and garner credit for this. I think it's fantastic that Nova Scotians showed some class and refrained from booing. So good on us for sure. Like to thank Vanessa Van Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. And we will open the phone lines in about an hour's time. Nearly 70% of Canadians think less of the United States due to Trump tariffs, according to polling done by Ipsos. A new poll by Ipsos for Global News found a whopping 68% of Canadians surveyed think less of the United States as a country after Trump threatened Canada's economy with 25% tariffs that were meant to go into effect this week before being paused. So I will ask you the question, do you think less of Americans as a result of this trade war and Trump policies in general? And has this impacted your behavior, your habits, what you buy, what you watch, where you travel? And is it unfair to judge an American based on what its government's doing and what Trump does? We had Tony call the show yesterday and audibly upset. He said that he took his American flag down and he feels almost like a second-class citizen now and doesn't feel comfortable in his U.S. skin here in Canada because of the backlash that has been a result of these tariffs and this tariff war. So do you think less of America and Americans as a result of this? Or do you say, look, this is their government, this is perhaps a bad government, maybe you like the government, maybe you like Trump. Obviously, some of you do. I don't know how it's becoming increasingly difficult to defend what they're doing and their policies and what he's doing. But some of you obviously do defend and like Trump. But I'll ask you that question. And would you treat an American any differently as a result of that? A traveler or whatever. And I would hope that you would not. Anyway, that's one of the questions I will ask. Also, Energy East pipeline. This is something that got a lot of traction a number of years ago. As it was, we know that Alberta crude is landlocked, basically landlocked. There's a pipeline to the West Coast now that I'm not sure if it's fully operational yet or not, owned by the Canadian government, by the way. They took a big loss on that. But most of our pipelines go, of course, north-south into the United States. And for many years, there was a lot of conversation about getting a pipeline to the East Coast where the Irving refinery could manufacture and refine and distribute from there and then get oil to tidal waters off to Europe and LNG and all of that. So what are your thoughts on having revitalized talks about an Energy East pipeline? Federal Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson says Ottawa and the provinces should discuss the possibility of an oil pipeline to eastern Canada to improve energy security and to diversify trade. Now, even Quebec, even some people in Quebec are saying that it's time to have the conversation because we've had a massive wake-up call when it comes to our economy and being so beholden to the United States, including our energy exports. We all recognize that we need to diversify our trading partners. And energy is a massive opportunity for Canada. Liquefied natural gas, shale gas, energy extraction. So on top of, do you support a revitalized Energy East pipeline, do you also support scaling up our extraction of natural resources, including uranium and lithium and precious minerals and things that we need and the world needs? What are your thoughts on all of that? Another question I'll ask you. The Liberal Party appears to be enjoying a polling bump at the expense of the Conservatives after Trudeau announced he will not lead the party into the next election. So some movement on polling, although Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives still have a commanding lead in the national poll, with 41% of respondents saying they'd vote for the party if an election were held tomorrow. That's a 13 percentage point lead over the governing Liberals at 28%. And although that's still a healthy gap for the Conservatives, it's not what it was. And it appears as though the Liberals have some wind in their sails. And you can be assured that Pierre Poilievre is just chomping at the bit to get an election as fast as he possibly can, but has he been largely neutered with the carbon tax off the table now, and a new dialogue about diversifying trade and a new narrative with the United States and that relationship. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the Liberals can close the gap? Are you watching this? Are you paying attention to it? Which of any of these Liberal contenders do you like, or do you think that they're all the same? And also, of course, a tax hike here in HRM. We talked about this with Tony Mancini yesterday, 2.7%. 4.7% assessment increase. That equals a 7.6% increase in total to generate nearly $70 million shortfall that the municipality needs to finalize its $1.3 billion budget. Compensation increases, inflation, capital projects increase, population, etc. Does council work hard enough to limit these increases, in your opinion? Do you feel like you have a strong advocate on your behalf representing you at council? Or do you feel that this council and other councils have just simply been too soft and rolled over too easily when it comes to the demands of staff and the various departments when they're looking for increases? These are things that you can talk about. And, of course, the Super Bowl, you can get into that as well. If you're going to watch the Super Bowl, why not? We can throw that in the mix as well. So that and lots of other things to get to. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening, everybody. We appreciate it very, very much. All right, now joining us for a chat is Nan McFadgen, CUPE president here in Nova Scotia. Nan, thanks for joining the show.
You're most welcome. Pleasure to be here.
All right, so Nova Scotia Health needs to address ongoing problems with its security contractor following the most recent stabbing incident at the Halifax Infirmary. And you've got some concerns with Paladin Security, right?
Yes, it is Paladin Security.
Okay, what are the issues?
So we've been trying to bargain a first collective agreement with Paladin Security since 2023. And one of the asks was some protective gear, including a splash vest, to help prevent stabbing injuries, and obviously better wages so that they can at least have enough to live off of. And they've declined our ask for splash vests for our members, and it was brought to the forefront once again when we saw the stabbing in the city, which was absolutely terrible. And we think that as a result, we need to push again for the splash vests and to protect our workers who are grossly underpaid, and also for the way that they've been disqualified from the nominee program, which impacts, I think it's 65% of the workers at Paladin.
All right, so tell us more about Paladin and what their capabilities are and what their expectations are. What does the job, I guess, entail?
Well, security at the hospital. At hospitals, you will see them. They're supposed to help with, really anything that would work towards keeping workers and visitors and patients safe at the hospital. The problem is that they're not being afforded the gear to keep themselves safe in the role of keeping others safe. It's their actual job. They take their job very seriously. And it's a difficult thing to protect people when you're not even allowed or appropriately funded for a splash vest. And they say it's because NSH doesn't give them money for that in the contract. I think it's more likely driven by their shareholders and their profit. They are a multinational corporation.
Okay, so what recourse does the province have, or what expectations are you as the CUPE leader here hoping to see here?
Well, I would like to see the workers, the security workers across the province brought in-house. There are some hospitals, I would use Antigonish, St. Martha's as an example, they have security workers in-house. So that means they're employees of NSH. And it's clear to us that NSH, and by extension government, because it's a public service, would be more invested in the safety of their workers than a multinational corporation who is invested in the pocketbook of their shareholders. It's just, and that's not to be glib. I mean, a private corporation is answerable to the people who are making money from the corporation. That's the very model of it. Public service is meant to serve Nova Scotians, and it's meant to keep workers safe in that service.
All right, what would the cost difference be? Do you know?
I don't, but I think it can't be so terrible because they're already in-house in other hospitals. So it can be done. It's a question of choices.
Yeah, it's a question of choices for sure, and I would think that your members, it's a question of wanting to go to work and feeling safe as well. I mean, everybody wants a safe work environment. Not only wants, but it deserves and is entitled to a safe work environment.
Exactly. Our members take a great deal of pride in the service that they provide, and I don't think it's too much to ask that they could be safe whilst they do that.
Okay, Nan, listen, I appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this, and we'll talk again.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for highlighting this for the folks at Paladin. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Nan McFadgen, CUPE president. Let's see here. Liberal leadership. Liberal leadership candidates will have to clear a $125,000 hurdle today. The party requires candidates to pay a total entrance fee of $350,000 in installments. So far, the candidates still in the race have made two initial payments of $50,000 each, one to launch their campaigns, the other to obtain access to the party's membership list. Those candidates who meet today's deadline will still have to make final payments of $125,000 by February 17th at the latest. I can't imagine, it's just me, I don't know why, but I can't imagine of all of the things where I could support and all the places where my money could go to help people, and including my own budget, but outside of that, of course, being altruistic and trying to and be philanthropic. I can't imagine giving any money to a political party or a political candidate. I just can't. That would be the last place I would put my money. I mean, there would be food banks. There would be endless places where I would donate money to. The QE2, IWK, you go down a very, very long list of places where I would put my money before I would give it to a political leader or a political party. That's just me. It just amazes me how people just will support politicians and political parties despite all the scandals and despite all of the obvious misrepresentations. And I know we have a democracy, and it's an integral part of democracy, and campaigning costs money, and I don't begrudge anybody who does. I'm just speaking personally. I would never ever give a political party or anybody representing or running a nickel, not a penny. But obviously, a lot of people do because they're raising the money. It's hard to believe that they can raise this kind of money, but on it goes. All right. Anyway, we'll talk about this with Tim Powers later on after the 10:30 news. But next, Janet Hazleton, president of the Nova Scotia Nurses Union. We'll be back. Janet Hazleton joins us for a chat, president of the Nova Scotia Nurses Union. Janet, thanks for joining the show, of course.
You're welcome.
All right, so seniors at some long-term care home facilities are getting help faster for common ailments after the province funded the training for nurses to prescribe medication. The pilot project running in several homes across the province saw 13 nurses in continuing care complete a Dalhousie University certificate in the registered nurse prescribing program in December. A second group of nurses started the course in January. Another cohort expected to start in the fall. So expanding scope of practice is obviously a great way to help deal with some of the issues, right?
No, absolutely. And this RN prescribing, we already have several in acute care, and they've just and VON, and they've extended to long-term care. Because oftentimes our long-term care residents need to go to our emerge department and be there for quite some time to get an antibiotic for a urinary tract infection. So nurses within the home will be able to do that now.
Yeah, for sure. So is this is something I'm sure is done in other jurisdictions, or we're not the first, are we?
Well, the first in Canada, I'm pretty sure. I asked my colleagues this week when I was at a national meeting, and no one. Now, that's not to say it's not happening somewhere, but the people I was speaking to were very interested in this program and indicated that, as far as they knew, it wasn't in their province. So, I think Nova Scotia is being pretty innovative in lots of things, this being yet another.
All right, and with that increased responsibility, I'm sure that they would have to be compensated for that, which is great, which is fine. But a pay bump. What's the cost of this? I guess is the question.
It's the nurses would get $4 more an hour, so not huge cost. But when you think about how much the cost to the system for someone to wait in an emerge department for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours, not just to the system, but to the resident themselves. And, sometimes we're tying up paramedics and a nurse. And so this should help ease the burden in our long-term care facilities, but more importantly, for the residents.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously the stress that goes with it, and that you can't measure the stress that the patient or the resident goes under and not being able to get the care that they need in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I mean, we all know we all have stories of our loved ones being in emerge too long. But when they come from a nursing home where we have registered nurses that are able to, and oftentimes know, like they know that Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so has a urinary tract infection, because it's often not their first one. When seniors often will get urinary tract infections that need antibiotics, and so that's just one of many. Having a headache. If there's no Tylenol ordered, we would have to phone a physician, and if we can't, or a nurse practitioner, if we can't find them, then, they'd either be in pain or would have to send them to emerge.
Where else might there be opportunities to expand scope of practice?
Well, we're doing the internal travel nurse. We're about to launch that. And so what we hope that will do is alleviate the necessity for outside travel nurses from other provinces. And so we're going to have our own team very shortly that will be going to places in the province that are experiencing sort of chronic vacancies, and they'll work there to help the nurses in those areas. And so that's Manitoba and Newfoundland are the only two other provinces that have it, and we're about to.
Okay, that's pretty exciting stuff. When it comes to recruitment and nursing numbers, how are we doing with on that side of the ledger?
Unfortunately, we're not doing as well as we need to be doing, but we are making slow and steady progress. We kept, I think, was 87% of our new grads last year stayed and are working in this province, so that's great. We've had a significant uptake in our internationally educated nurses, so all that is good, but we're still struggling with vacancies, which hurts nurses' work-life balance. And when that happens, we often see nurses go from full-time to part-time because they can't, they can't work all the overtime. So we have to keep working hard at it, and hopefully we'll find a solution sooner rather than later. But I will say we are making progress.
All right, I saw a story on the CBC website this week. A nursing professor hopes an increase in enrollment at the 2-year nursing program at St. Francis Xavier University will help Nova Scotia combat a shortage of nurses in rural areas. The associate dean at the University School of Nursing said 48 new students entered the program in January, up from 31 last year. She said the program is popular with mature students because it makes it easier for those with previous work and academic experience to obtain a nursing degree faster. So what are your thoughts on expanding two-year programs?
Oh, it's great. So these young men and women would already have, most of the time, at least a two-year science undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
So they have all their electives already done. So let's do a two-year program that focus only or primarily on nursing, the things that they have to know to be a nurse. And we need to expand upon that, as well as the bridging program for LPNs to RNs. You know, we have a number of LPNs that want to become RNs, and we need to figure out a way that we can compensate them for doing that. And I don't mean to pay them to go to school. I mean to continue their salary while they go to school. It's very difficult if you have a family and a mortgage and to, quit and go back to school for 2 years. But these LPNs, these nurses, have already demonstrated that they want to work and live in Nova Scotia. So in my view, they're a sure thing, as opposed to, people from other provinces or people from other countries. We never know when they come how long they're going to stay. Numbers of IENs in all provinces come and then they go somewhere like Ontario, where often have a group of individuals that are from the same country as they are. So often that will attract them, the bigger cities. So the LPN to RN program, I think, is one of the best investments this government could make.
Okay, Janet, appreciate your time. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Okay, talk soon.
All right, take care. Janet Hazleton, president of the Nova Scotia Nurses Union. A new report from Statistics Canada says Nova Scotia had the highest rate of poverty among the provinces in 2022. The report says 12.5% of Nova Scotians live below the poverty line in 2022, compared with the Canadian average of 9.9%. The Statistics Agency says someone lives in poverty if they can't afford the cost of a basket of goods and services that represents a basic standard of living. So once again, a bad number, a bad statistic for the province of Nova Scotia. We seem to be at the bottom of these ratings, and you got to shake your head and ask yourself the question, what is going on at some point? Imagine 12.5% of Nova Scotians are living below the poverty line in 2022, and I'll bet you it's more than that. I'll bet you I'm not sure what the metrics are, what the methodology was that went into determining this, but I would bet that if you were to go out and really get a handle on how people are living and how they're getting by on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, you would find that most people are struggling mightily to make ends meet and are juggling debt in a big-time way. That's my feeling. Look, I've been there. I've lived that way at certain points in my life where I've struggled a lot. So I know what it's like to be what I would describe as the working poor. And at the end of the month, literally, when you're down to whether you're going to have 10 or 15 or 20 extra dollars or not that month, every month, I've lived like that. I know what it's like. So I would suggest that this 12.5% of living below the poverty line would be even more if you really, really delved into it and had a look at it and looked at the way people are living and surviving in this day and age. It's tough out there, folks. And I don't think it's going to get any easier anytime soon, that's for sure. Tim Powers when we come back. All right, joining us for our weekly chat is Tim Powers, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. Tim Powers, you watching the Super Bowl on Sunday night, or can you stay up that late now?
Oh, Todd, I mean, it's pretty late, man. And
I know.
I don't know if I can stand Kansas City winning again. Go Saquon, go.
Yeah, I know. I don't know either. And the I get it that the halftime shows are no longer. I'm no longer the key demographic. But come on, where are the Rolling Stones and the Who and some of these bands? I guess they don't care about me and the demographic anymore. The old guy, right?
Listen, we're irrelevant, Todd. Look, the Doobie Brothers, and maybe a Doobie, and we'll survive. Hey, there you go.
All right, there you go. All right, I see Justin Trudeau is now speaking at this economic summit. He's got his shirt sleeves rolled up, his top button's undone. He's got his tie down. He's looking enthusiastic. He looks like he wants to stay. or he can do whatever the hell he wants right now because he's going. Look, I probably wouldn't break his heart if he got to fight in an election campaign, but it would probably break the hearts of Liberal partisans. Pierre Poilievre would probably also like if Justin Trudeau decided to stay. But yeah, he's a little bit more energized at the moment, but he doesn't really have any pressure on him politically now. He does have the pressure of the Trumps and Trump's tariffs and all of that, and that's not going anywhere soon. But I mean, the thing about this summit that's interesting, good on him for having it. I almost just feel like we're talking to ourselves and among ourselves, which is good, but we're not really talking to Americans. And I know the Canadian government is, I know the provinces are all still doing that. It'd be just, if we had the summit, it would have been great. Maybe it wasn't feasible to have some American participation there who could help drive this along. All right, so there's this idea now that we're kind of pumping our chests a bit here now as a country and saying how we stood up to the Americans and all of this. Is that perhaps a little premature?
Yeah, I mean, look, Trump's not going anywhere, right? He's still there, and I wouldn't be doing victory laps yet, engaging in triumphalism. It reminds me of a guy who thought when the Jets got what's his
Aaron
name,
Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers, they were going to win the Super Bowl. And remember what happened to that guy? Not much good.
Wow. All right, so our Americans, look, this has impacted the markets have been impacted by this. Do you think that anybody's getting in Trump's ear at all with influence, saying, look, this whole trade war that you picked with Canada and Mexico might not be a good idea? Do you think anybody's got any ability to tell Trump what he might not want to hear at this point?
I think it has to be a constant bell, an alarm bell that is going off that would do that. I think there are probably a few people who might be saying, and from some of his political allies saying, hey, but they're not doing it yet, right? The more I think about this, Todd, he wants this 100 days, and we all know the story of the first 100 days. This is supposed to be the time when you have the most impact because it's a time when you have the most power. I think he is prepared to just be oblivious to other points of view, see what he can do over the next 100 days, and see what kind of damage and rubble is left afterwards and what he picks up from there. Because each day further into your administration, the harder it gets to move things along. So I think, people may be saying to him, no, you shouldn't do this. But he's like, well, this is what I did in real estate for years, and this is no different, and this is what I'm going to do.
Yep. 70% of Canadians think less of the U.S. due to Trump tariffs, according to some polling, not done by your polling, done by Ipsos.
Company.
Yeah, there you go. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's an accurate reflection, or what are your thoughts?
I think it's an emotional reaction. It's like the booing at the hockey games the other day, and let's hope we don't see any more of that, right? I mean, we got the big four. In Halifax, you've had the rivalry series. I don't think there was any booing last night.
There was none.
Good. Yeah. And we got the big Four Nations series coming up with Canada and the U.S. playing next Saturday night. We don't want any of that. I think there's an emotional reaction. I can just tell you, reason I wasn't with you last week, I was with my son in Rochester, New York. We were at a hockey tournament there. We were the only Canadian team in our division. And as you do, you talk to the parents and families from the other teams, and most of our competition was from New York. And our whole group of Canadians were just, hanging by our fingernails waiting to figure out what was going to happen with tariffs and the like. None of the American families really knew anything about it. And that's not because they're ignorant or stupid or don't like Canada, it's because it's not in their face as it is in the country. So, before we start hating on Americans, let's give them a chance to get caught up to what we're dealing with from their president.
For sure. All right. When it comes to the Liberal leadership race, what's the polling data tell us, and what the Liberals are getting a bump as well as they usually do, as parties usually do when they have a leadership race. What are the polling data? What's the data telling us concerning all of the things federal Liberals right now?
I think I saw, I don't know which organization it was, but it was a national one. It wasn't us, yesterday or the day before that, tested three Liberal leaders, tested Mark Carney, tested Chrystia Freeland, and tested the current Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau. Mm-hmm. And, Carney, at least in that public opinion sampling, is doing better with voters in Quebec and Ontario, if I'm remembering this correctly. I know some of our Abacus Data, now still behind the Conservatives nationally, although in Ontario and Quebec, I think it was Main Street, maybe they were ahead of the Conservatives with a changed leader. Our Abacus Data, and this is just when the race started, had Carney performing better than Freeland, but still, 16, 20 points back. So absolutely, there's been a little bit of movement that, as you just said a moment ago, is pretty normal in leadership races. How much further can they move it? What happens when there's more testing of the candidates? Because we really haven't seen. I mean, Mark was in your neck of the woods. He did Todd Battis, and of course that's a big platform. Todd's a professional. But they haven't really done that much Canadian media. I mean, Mark Carney was on CNN this week. I think Freeland was as well. I mean, they're doing what Canadian politicians love to do: get on American media, look like you're a big deal in the U.S., and hope that inflates the way people look at you in Canada.
Does Chrystia Freeland really
believe? For me, I just do the Todd Veinotte show because that makes me a big deal nowhere but in my own mind.
Oh, there you go. Does Chrystia Freeland really think that she's got a legitimate shot at this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she's certainly campaigning like she does. Maybe she's hoping that, if there are, I mean, it's kind of bizarre to me that we haven't even heard if there are going to be debates, Todd, or anything like that yet. I think, and she's proposed 4, I believe. So I think she's hoping if she gets an opportunity to take Mark Carney on, the fact that he hasn't had as much, political experience will benefit her, and she can showcase her talent. So she doesn't seem to be stepping back from the breach on that at all.
Yeah, and of course we're talking about some issues like defense spending, suggesting, I think she said that pledging that members of the Canadian Armed Forces get a 50% pay hike, and saying that she'd get to that 2% mark in 2027.
Why didn't she do it?
That's exactly the response that she's going to get every time. Where was all of this when you had the opportunity for 9 years, right? And that's a legitimate response.
Whether it be in politics, sports, radio, ultimately it's your credibility, and people will have a particular opinion of yours, and most people try to work hard to earn it based on the things that they do. And if suddenly you do a bunch of things that are totally different than what you had done previously, and you want people to believe that, they're going to be very skeptical at first. So she's going to have to overcome that skepticism. I think her credibility was probably enhanced with her resignation from the Trudeau cabinet and the way in which she did it. But now she's looking like she's not just running away from Justin Trudeau. She looks like she's running away from the Chrystia Freeland that was Minister of Finance for a very long time.
All right, and also I want to get your take on Energy East, which seems to get some traction again. Obviously, this is something that was a grandiose plan for a number of years and lost energy, and we know that the challenges of the jurisdiction of going through Quebec. But what are your thoughts on the Energy Minister, Federal Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, floating the idea again of an Energy East pipeline?
Well, what does Quebec think? Look, I think they have to do that. I think that's part of the stuff they need to fire up and try and create some political pressure around all of that. But, Quebec's going into an election next year. Legault just did a big deal with us being Newfoundland and Labrador on Churchill Falls. doesn't mean you can't walk and chew gum. But unless there's been a real change of mindset in the province of Quebec itself around pipelines and the extraction of oil and gas, or in this case, gas, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Indeed. Okay, so you don't know whether you're going to watch the Super Bowl or not? You don't have a prediction. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'll watch some of it. But I have to tell you this quickly. I know you got to go to break. So I was out for a run when we were in Rochester, and you would have loved this. You would have got a kick out of it. So I'm running in this small village called Victor, New York, and I come up on this place, and Todd, there are 12 Buffalo Bill cutouts on the lawn. I felt like going, if it was Jets, I knew who lives here. It would all be Todd. But, yeah, they were hardcore Bills fans. I felt like saying, guys, guess what? They're not going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, well, good thing you didn't, Tim. You were a gentleman.
No, I
anyway.
would probably be in the ground buried there now, Todd.
Exactly.
If I knocked on the door and pointed that out.
Okay, pal. Thanks, Tim.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, you got a Tim Power, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. A caregiver tax credit would support Nova Scotians who care for sick family members. We'll talk with Claudia Chender about this when we come back. All right, joining us now is a chat with Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP, official opposition here in Nova Scotia. Claudia, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time, of course.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. So a few things I want to talk to you about, but first let's talk about this caregiver tax credit that you feel would support Nova Scotians who care for sick family members.
Sure. Well, I mean, like many Nova Scotians, I have family members and close friends and, grandparents, parents who have experienced long periods of illness. In my case, often cancer, in many cases, often cancer, but there are many others. And we know that increasingly it's, family members who are shouldering the burden of the caregiving. So there's a caregiver benefit currently in Nova Scotia. It's $400. But cancer is expensive. And when people are incapacitated, that caregiving, if it was not provided by a family member, would add up to real and significant cost to an individual. And so this is a tax credit. It's modeled on something that's already present in Nova Scotia, where if you are the primary caregiver and you're notified as that on your taxes, and there's a doctor form, and you're spending a significant amount of time as a caregiver, then you get a tax credit for that, $1,400. We think that this is, particularly you and I have talked a lot about affordability. We are in a challenging moment when it comes to affordability, and often sickness means loss of work, both for the person who's ill and for the person taking care of them. So this is recognizing that. This is recognizing the Nova Scotians who are stepping out to care for friends and family, and to do what we can to help them, and also to help take that pressure off of what would otherwise be on the healthcare system, which, despite claims to the contrary, is not yet fixed.
All right. And what are your thoughts on government going for this?
Well, we'll see. We will continue to champion this and put it forward. This is not a partisan bill. This is something that has been championed by caregiver societies, by the Canadian Cancer Society, has really kind of been running with this idea, trying to put this forward to all political parties. So I think they should. I think, to the extent that we can help people to be able to help themselves, we should do that. So it's absolutely a good idea. It's tested. It's happening in other provinces, and so we'll be looking for government to make this change.
And of course, the cost saving when you think about if somebody is left to care for themselves and unable to, and then they end up in an emergency room and needing extra care, and the burden to the healthcare system. This is an investment, obviously, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we think it's an investment that will absolutely pay for itself. That kind of emergency care is very expensive for our system. Whereas here, we're not only, this isn't only an upstream intervention in terms of like helping people to avoid those emergency interventions where possible. But, we're also in a material way helping the people who are providing that care, who in many cases could really use the help.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what's going on with the with all the discussion about interprovincial trade barriers and the trade war with the U.S. and tariffs and all of that. Are you pleased with what you're seeing from the federal and provincial governments to this point as far as the response goes?
Well, I think what we're seeing from the federal government is, I think right now there's that economic task force meeting. They're bringing together, labor and industry and other leadership to talk about a response. They're, sort of standing strong. We're really seeing a Team Canada approach, and we support that. We did hear an announcement yesterday from the Premier's office about a hotline here, but we also really support a Team Nova Scotia approach. And so we'd like to hear more from the Premier. And we would like to see that same kind of approach of a task force, a council that we're seeing right across the country, from Newfoundland and Labrador to Manitoba and British Columbia. Even New Brunswick, I think, has a trade mission that they're going down to the States with the Premier. That's what we haven't seen here yet. And so, we support anything our government can do to ensure that we shore up our economy, that we're protecting the sectors that will be most impacted, and that we have a plan. But, the clock is ticking right now. And so this is our moment to be preparing for that. And we'd like to see the government publicly engaging more voices on that question.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the development of natural resources as a way of diversifying and our ability to deal with these types of trade threats and just diversification in general and moving forward? Do you agree with that? The Premier quite boldly talked about that a week ago. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that, our natural resource industries are absolutely the bedrock that our economy has been built on and in many ways continues to run on. So if we think about the fisheries and the forestry sector and agriculture, these are absolutely vital pieces of our economy, and there are lots of opportunities there. So we absolutely support looking for those opportunities and innovation and support, and I think there's lots of opportunities. When it comes to sort of categorically lifting the bans on things like uranium mining and fracking, that feels a little bit opportunistic, like we're taking advantage of a crisis. So one interesting thing is, when the ministers were pressed, because we haven't heard from the Premier in weeks now, we haven't seen him, he didn't come to Cabinet, but when the ministers were pressed on whether those bans in particular were preventing any development, they couldn't say yes. They didn't have any sense of a single project that, there are no proponents coming forward to develop those projects. So, and those bans came about for very good reason. Now, if the Premier wants to revisit those, that's absolutely his prerogative. But then let's make sure that we're looking at the science, that we're engaging communities. We are a small province. So when we talk about things like mining, we have a lot of contaminated mine sites in our province that are going to cost really probably in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to clean up over the next several decades. And there are risks to things like groundwater. So technology is always improving, but people are right to be cautious. And when it comes to finding new opportunities in our resource sectors, I think that there are ones probably closer at hand than those.
Okay, shale gas. What do you feel as though that shale gas is something that we could re-examine here in the province?
Well, this is what I was just talking about. It's same as uranium. Should we look at it? Sure, we should look at everything. I don't think there's ever been a very compelling case made that this is something that we have enormous opportunity for in Nova Scotia. And unlike a province like famously Alberta, if we had a project like that, it would be in someone's backyard. So all of the challenges to groundwater, all of the waste that's, generated, that's not just going to be, 100 miles from the nearest settlement. That's going to be in a community. And those are things that we have to look at in a Nova Scotia context. And again, as far as I understand, and as far as the government's been able to tell us, there isn't anyone chomping at the bit to explore for shale gas development here in Nova Scotia. So I'm not sure where all that is coming from. Maybe there are big corporations who are knocking on the Premier's door and telling him they want to look at this opportunity. But if there are, we're not hearing about it. Mm-hmm. And I think there are lots of other opportunities in our resource sector, in the fisheries, in terms of promotion, in terms of technology, same with agriculture, that can really help the companies that we have and people coming up to take advantage of more opportunities. So it feels important to start there. And of course, you would have seen what happened when the Premier floated the idea of opening up George's Bank. I mean, why would we risk one industry for the hypothetical possibility of another? And I think the Premier said it was, special interest groups that were going to speak out against this. Well, you had the $2.5 billion fishery sector saying, listen, Premier, this is a bad idea. Yeah. They're not a special interest group. They are a pillar of our economy. Right. So we need to make sure that listening is happening and that we're doing things in a way that is consonant with obviously growing our economy, because that's really important right now, but also making sure we're doing that in a sustainable way.
Okay, Claudia, appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP and official opposition here in Nova Scotia. Now we've got some time for you. What is on your mind on this Friday? The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. It appears as though people took my advice yesterday. Not that I'm taking any credit for it, but there was no booing at the women's hockey game last night between the Americans and Canadians and here in Halifax, and that's fantastic. Almost 10,000 people, and they showed a lot of class, so good for them. So what are your thoughts, folks? 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, got open lines for you folks. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. What would you like to talk about today? It's a Friday, 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz. Again, open lines for you folks, 902-405-6000. Nearly 70% of Canadians think less of U.S. Due to Trump tariffs, according to Ipsos Reid. Reading this on the Global News website today, U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threats and talk about making Canada the 51st state have made Canadians angry, very angry. A new poll by Ipsos for Global News found a whopping 68% of Canadians surveyed think less of the United States as a country after Trump threatened Canada's economy with 25% tariffs that were meant to go into effect this week before being paused. Nearly half of all respondents, 46%, said they strongly held that negative perception. The question, or some of the questions that I'll throw out to you is, do you think less of Americans, of U.S. citizens, as a result of this trade war and Trump policies in general? Has your attitude changed when it comes to Americans and U.S. citizens and people you may know and visit and are friends with? Has this whole thing impacted your behavior, your habits, your buying habits? What you buy, what you watch, where you travel. Have you perhaps canceled travel plans to the United States or not gone forward with travel plans to the United States? Have you refrained from buying products from the United States? Will you continue to do so? And is it unfair to judge American citizens based on Trump and his policies? Is that unfair to do so? 902-405-6000. Look, Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister of Canada. He doesn't represent me. The Prime Minister is, I guess, by extension, internationally, a reflection of all Canadians. But I don't feel he's a reflection of who I am and what I believe and think. So I don't know that it's fair. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that it's not fair to judge Americans based on what Donald Trump is doing or not, or whomever. That's one of the things that you can talk about, 902-405-6000. Also, Ottawa, Federal Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson says Ottawa and the provinces should discuss the possibility of an oil pipeline to eastern Canada to improve energy security and to diversify trade. What are your thoughts on the resurrection of the idea of an Energy East pipeline? This is something that had momentum and the Liberals killed. back in 2017 when they canceled it, and there are jurisdictional challenges, of course, with Quebec. But now it appears as though, based on the current climate that we're living in, economic climate, that even Quebec might revisit this. Do you support, or would you support, the expansion of pipelines? 902-405-6000. And the expansion of natural resources as well here in this province, as Tim Houston, the Premier, has suggested is necessary, has stated that are necessary moving forward, including the development of mining of lithium, of uranium, and other precious metals that we have. 902-405-6000. What are your thoughts on polling, which indicates that the Liberals are trending upwards a bit, still have a deficit, but looks like they've received a bump in polling? And this is quite common, obviously, when parties have elections, leadership elections, because that creates a lot of interest and buzz, and by extension, coverage and support. But the Liberal Party appears to be enjoying a polling bump at the expense of the Conservatives after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's announcement that he will not lead the party into the next election, according to the latest numbers from Ipsos Research for Global News. Trudeau's pending departure and the threat of U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war seem to be tightening the race in federal voting intention, despite voters not knowing who will become the next Liberal leader and Prime Minister. So still a nice, pretty comfortable lead. The Conservatives at 41%. But that's a 13% lead from the governing Liberals at 28%. But that was, you got to remember, folks, that was almost 25% of a gap at one point. So that's closing quite a bit. Can the Liberals continue to close this gap? And which, if any of these leadership contenders, do you like? And, of course, also, after all of that, if you want to talk about local issues, the tax hike coming to HRM. I talked about this with Tony Mancini yesterday, the deputy mayor. A 2.7% increase in property, or rather in the tax rate, along with a 4.7% assessment increase. That total 7.6% increase that's needed to generate the $70 million extra that is being asked of council to approve in order for all departments to meet their demands, including compensation increases, capital projects, increased population, inflation. Does council work hard enough to limit these increases, in your opinion? Do you have a strong advocate? Is your councillor in your district a strong advocate for you? Or do you feel as though council too often does the bidding of staff and departments when it comes to granting approvals and tax hikes and increases? So that, or whatever else you would like to talk about, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Open lines for you, folks. Barry, hello.
Hello. Back in the 30s, the population of Canada was somewhere at 12, 13 million, and the number of people that were fascist or racist was about the population of Canada. Now the States has a population of 400 million. They're about that percentage voted for Trump. Hey, we fought side by side with Americans in the Second World War. In Canada, we have Quebec separatists wanting what they want. Alberta, that's about the same in every country. I mean, there's a lot of Americans didn't realize Trump would go as far as he has. I'm positive of that. So why disrespect them? It's basically, it seems like nothing changes. It's the same as it was back in the 30s, and it's the same way now. I mean, and most Americans are very, very good people. So to hate them because of the actions of an idiot is really unfair. I mean, I've been down there. I've always been treated good. I've been treated worse in Quebec than I have in the States. So yeah, we should respect them and realize that, hey, let's just hope that they can end this mess in the States before it gets too bad.
Okay, Barry, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Harvey, hello.
Todd, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm well. You?
Yeah, I just wanted to call in and talk to you about something you said recently this morning about how desperately people are off in Nova Scotia. And by the way, I agree with you about poverty, and I agree with you about how people are bad. But at the same time, I'm surrounded by people, Todd, that have pensions that are incredibly wealthy. And so there's sort of a mixed communication in my mind about that. Like, if you are over 65 and you have like a defined pension plan or any kind of pension plan, you're doing very well. You're doing very well in this province. And I just wanted to make that point as a counterpoint to what you were saying. That's all I'm saying. In terms of your point, I guess. And by the way, I have to tell you, I totally agree with you about Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah.
I think she would be the absolutely worst prime minister in the history of Canada if she would become prime minister. And actually, I want to say this about Justin Trudeau, if I could. He's, in my opinion, the first New Democratic Party prime minister Canada has ever had. If you think about it, but that's just, he spent money buying votes. Anyway, I don't want to be like, like I said, I agree with almost all of your opinions, except for one thing, Todd. I don't think the other candidate that is running for the Liberal Party, who considers himself to be an outsider, I don't think in any way he is an outsider. I think he's the most insider of all the candidates that you could put up for the leadership. It is fascinating, though. Within a week, the Conservatives have taken such a hit, and it's because of Trump that they took the hit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And it's because all of a sudden Canada decided, we have to start pulling our own weight. We have to start fighting against Donald Trump. And so you can no longer be just saying negative. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Team Canada rallying cry. The government of the day is going to get a bump for sure for a variety of reasons. So, Harvey, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. Yeah, you would expect that. Look, Trudeau had a bit of a moment last week when he spoke Saturday night. A lot of the country was watching, and he spoke eloquently and had a pretty commanding delivery, I will say, and I gave him props for that. And again, he's got some wind in his sails, and the Liberals have some wind in their sails right now. Will it be enough to push them closer and closer to the area where they could possibly beat the Conservatives? I don't know. I know that Chrystia Freeland, I said this before and I'll say it again, has zero chance, and I mean zero chance of ever winning an election. She would be the absolute worst choice the Liberals could make. I think it's going to be Mark Carney for sure. And is Mark Carney an insider? Well, yeah, I'm sure he's an insider. Of course he's an insider. He has his fingerprints all over a lot of the policies and economic policies of the Liberals. He was hired by the Liberal Party of Canada to offer advice. And he's been quite vocal about carbon pricing, and that's no secret. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls continue when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Todd.
Hi there.
I was just seeing something last night online that blew my mind and just want to get your opinion on it. So you hear all the time about people saying they're paying $1,500, $2,500 in that range for rent, but the banks are telling them they don't qualify to pay a mortgage. Which, I mean, is crazy if you ask me. But I'll give you one example even better. I was online last night, and I came across, there's a big RV show in Alberta, and it's also online. They have RVs for $500 and $600 biweekly payments for 300-month amortizations, or 300 weeks, or 300 months, sorry. So that's like 25 years. And there's no CMHC, there's no down payment, there's no nothing. You just have to pass the credit check. So if the banks will lend people for 25 years, $250,000 or $300,000 for an RV, why is it so hard? Why doesn't the government change the criteria for CMHC to get people into their own homes?
Well, I can't answer that question for you. I think it's a good question. To me, anybody who goes out and buys an RV and is willing to spend that kind of money over 35 years, to your point, I think that's why I shouldn't say it. Look, people can do what they want. Financially, I think it would be a bad decision. I would never do it, but that's a good question. Why is it that why is it that a lender will give somebody that kind of money for an RV, and yet the rules for housing are much different? There's the stress test and all that goes with it. That's a good question. I don't have an answer for you, other than to say, Mike, I would never in a million years buy an RV. I think it would be a very poor use of my money, but that's just me.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just, especially that kind of money. I was just, kind of stumbled across it online, but it's just the whole no CMHC approval, no down payment, nothing.
That's a good point.
Pass the credit check and give her.
That's a legitimate point, Mike. I don't have an answer for you, but I think you raise a valid point.
Right on. All right, man. Have a good day.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Gloria, first-time caller, is that true?
Yes, I'm the first-time caller.
Great.
And I would like to comment on to do with Trudeau and Trump.
Sure.
Freeland. And as far as my concern, Trudeau has sold us out, period. Trudeau and Trump are the best of friends. They shook hands on it, and they are totally on the same page of doing everything that they can to make money. And the money that they make, Trudeau's going to have a part of it, and that'll pay his tariffs. And that's what Trump was always trying to do, make him get responsible for what he didn't do between there and the bridge. And Trudeau has sent $2 million over to Trump, not letting anyone know anything. Then he also... Okay,
I'm not sure. Look, Gloria, sorry to cut you off, but I just vehemently disagree, and to me it's just beyond logical. It's beyond logic to say that they have some type of a backroom deal. Just to me, it's just unfathomable, and I can't support it. Dave, hello.
Yes, good morning, Todd. I couldn't refrain from calling in. I'm just calling about relationships with American people. I've got relatives down in Connecticut, Nebraska, and my dad fought in the Second World War. He was in the U.S. Navy beating back the Japanese in the South China Sea. And I'm very patriotic, maybe even a little more patriotic to the U.S. than I am with Canada lately. Sadly, we are not the nation we once knew. Of course, we've changed. But having said that, I love this country. I paid my taxes in this country. But, you look at our Canadian dollar, Todd, and you go across the border, it's basically 50 cents on the dollar. You used to get good deals down there, but they're not so good at deals now. I also want to understand how many people have never left Nova Scotia, and gone into the United States. There's people who have never left this province, but they want to ridicule the United States. I've traveled through New York many times, and unfortunately we get on TV, CNN, or Fox, and you see these horrible incidences on the subways of New York, and the way some of the cities have been trashed in the United States, San Francisco, LA, Chicago. There's 4,000 murders in Chicago a year at least, mostly gangs, and you get a very bad impression, of course. But people down there, and this is a democratic state, I'm kind of partial to Trump. They know that, my relatives, and I didn't make the last trek down. My wife did, to visit her relatives down in Connecticut, very blue state, by the way, and they all missed me. They said, "Where's Dave?" And unfortunately, so they're very kind people. They love Canadians. And are they a little ignorant of Canada and where things are in Canada? Well, we could say the same about Canadians. I've asked people if they knew where I know Queen Charlotte Islands have changed its name, Vancouver Island. people here, I actually quiz them. I've been fortunate to have lived in both the East Coast and West Coast and traveled the country by car and met Canadians. So people are very, I think, sorry, folks, but I think the ignorance is not good. If you have never left the province or even entered the United States, some have gone to Florida. I've been up and down the East Coast, and I've been treated, Todd, royally. And I can assure you, if I go across the border again and wear that Canadian maple leaf, I will be treated very royally. I don't like to brag where we're from, but we should be very proud. And by the way, we have the biggest coastline in the world with the oceans that we're surrounded with. We have 4 derelict submarines. Now, I shouldn't say that. Maybe 2 have improved. Diesel. Bought them from Britain. Russia has, I think, I'm thinking 15 nuclear submarines. Nuclear icebreakers. I don't know. How many icebreakers do we have? So what my point is, who's going to protect us when possibly everybody's going to be fighting for the North Pole region? We need our friendship with the United States, including Trump, badly, because we need protection. We haven't done our share. And if there is a crisis up north, because it seems to be a contentious issue of late, right, with the ice melting, allegedly, shipping lanes and what have you, Trump, I think Putin's already planted a flag up in the North Pole on the bottom of the ocean. And we know his predictability, we don't know. So let's keep that in mind, folks. Who's going to come to our aid? And now we're scrambling to try to get up to snuff with the United Nations and pay our way. But it's maybe too little too late. We should have been doing this before. And we're scrambling for pipelines, right? Mm-hmm. We want to go, west to east. And we didn't do that. We shut it down. Now our back is up against the wall because governments change all the time. The world shifts all the time. And we haven't been prepared for this, obviously. So I think, folks, if you haven't left your province or the country to go down south ever, maybe try it out. Maybe now's not the time because of affordability or whatever, but it's a beautiful country. They treat us royally down there. They really do. And we should do the same up here because we get a lot of tourists. We have a lot of tourists coming in on these cruise ships that spend a lot of money, and most of them Americans. Thanks, Todd. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Take care. All right, 902-405-6000. Get some open lines for you, folks. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. It's a Friday, and we get some open lines for you, folks. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. Quick email from Mark, then back to the phones. Mark says, people must know that Mark Carney stated in a press conference here in Halifax during questions that he would replace the consumer carbon tax with a hefty carbon tax on Canadian industries, which will pass the tax increase on to consumers. He also intends to implement, if elected, a carbon border adjustment tariff on any industry outside Canada with a tariff on business that don't align with his carbon agenda. Justin Trudeau 2.0 and more pain for Canadians. That comes from Mark. And look, it's going to be hard, and that's going to be the playbook that the Conservatives are going to use here against Mark Carney. They've already got it written up. You can be assured of that. They're going to use all of the things that Mark Carney has said in the past when he was a central banker here in Canada and England and with the internet, all of it, World Economic Forum, all of it, they're going to bring it all back out, and there it's going to be all laid to bear. And it's going to be pretty difficult for Mark Carney to hide from it because he's been quite vocal on it. He has been a strong proponent of carbon pricing. And you're absolutely right that the consumer-facing carbon tax that has been so unpopular, if you replace that with something that's just hefty on industry, that eventually will just work its way through to you anyway. Look, the bottom line is, folks, is that you can charge all the tax you want. It's like these tariffs. Who eventually pays all of this? It's consumer, it's people, it's residents. That's who bears the brunt of all of these policies. Never the politicians and never big industry. It always filters back through to you. Every time. So you can be assured that Pierre Poilievre and their attacks against Mark Carney will be just that. basically just the same as they would have been with if it were Trudeau. Only they'll just replace Trudeau with Carney. They say that the argument will be he's one and the same, and there's some legitimacy to that. I think when it comes to policy and mindset. 902-405-6000. Gary, hello.
Good morning, Todd.
Hi there.
I just got to ask you first before I make any comment. Do you ever watch the John Daly show?
Occasionally.
Okay. Well, anyway, he interviewed Mark Carney extensively for, I don't know, must have been about 10 minutes at least, 10 to 15 minutes. It was a long interview, but Mark Carney was quite impressive on that. As a matter of fact, he's got a very humorous side about himself, and almost like an entertainer. I never thought he had a humorous side like he did, but during this whole interview, he was very debonair, just like John Daly said, and when you compare the answers that he gives to even Trudeau and Poilievre, he's not like an attack dog. He's stating facts about finances and things like that, and he's very dazzling in what he's saying. But during that whole interview, going towards the end of it, John Daly held up a picture of Trudeau and Poilievre, and he made a comic comparison between the two, like he wasn't even like they were not even on the same level as Mark Carney. That's what I got out of it. Anyway, they actually made fun of those two leaders. Mm-hmm. And so with the rise in the polls for the Liberals, I think it's stemming from what's happening with Mark Carney. I mean, he's getting out there, and he's been on CNN and with Jake Tapper. I don't know if you saw that interview, but at the end of that interview, Tapper tried to reel Mark Carney in by talking about the 51st state kind mm-hmm. of thing, and Mark Carney said, no, he said, well, the thing that Tapper said, how many Democrats do you think that would add to the Senate? And Mark Carney he just gave a little sly smile, and he just said, not going to happen, Jake. Mm-hmm. And he knew that he couldn't trap Carney, and I don't know what kind of answer Trudeau would have gave, or even Poilievre for that matter. But then then I watched interviews with Poilievre. I mean, he's not giving any hard financial facts of what he's going to do, other than that he attacked the fentanyl crisis. You know, there's no fentanyl crisis. He's talking about sentencing people to life in jail and stuff like that. And Todd, just to make it clear, I'm not a card-carrying member of any party. I hated the Liberal Party for the last 9 years because of Trudeau. I never thought he should have ever been in power. But now, you're hoping that with Mark Carney that these policies are going to go away. And the other thing that Mark Carney did say about the military is that he's going to speed up the 2% catch up by 2027. He's going to bring it forward. Yeah,
Chrystia Freeland said the same thing, I do believe.
Yeah, well, I mean, Chrystia Freeland, that's, I put them in the same category as Poilievre, Trudeau themselves. I never liked her either. But, I've been following these things quite closely, and Mark Carney is really making a mark for himself in the sense that when he's asked questions, he's very thoughtful about what he says. And even when they made fun of Poilievre and Trudeau on the John Daly show, he never bit at that either. And he just, he just says, well, everybody has their own style kind of thing, right?
Well, you seem like you got a man crush on this guy, Gary.
Well, the thing is, he's got quite a, like you said, Todd, he's got quite a impressive resume.
Yeah.
With Britain and Canadian banks, but the other thing about him, he's been noted as one of the monarchs of money, the 7 monarchs of money, by Neil MacDonald, the CBC reporter. And I don't know if you ever saw that one. It was about 10 years old now, and it's been in the, when the financial crisis hit the world, in 2008. Mm-hmm. And Mark Carney was right here in Canada pulling us out. But the seven monarchs of money, he thinks $1 trillion, and it's there. That's how those fellas act. So he's still in the 1%er, and that's the only part that I really don't trust about him, is that he's in with the money people, and I don't know how I'm going to vote, but it's making it hard for me to vote for Poilievre, and I just don't want to see the same things happen under Carney that happened under Trudeau. I think that they got to come back to the middle. Like there's too far right and there's too far left. Mm-hmm. So, but Mark Carney has an image that Canada needs. From what I've seen on all the CNN and Todd Daly, these other leaders just can't compare right now. Really.
Okay, Gary. Thanks for the call, pal. Take care.
Take care.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Look, there's no doubt that Mark Carney is debonair and whatever other adjective that Gary used there. He's smooth. You don't become the governor of the Bank of Canada and England if you're not smooth and slick. But I'm not sure that is reason why somebody is qualified to be or should be qualified to be the prime minister. 902-405-6000. But he's definitely a highly intelligent, highly educated man with a very impressive resume. Very impressive resume. But again, what he's going to have to defend is his record, and his record is what he said, what is on the public record concerning carbon pricing and other policies, which will be amplified and magnified by the Conservatives in the election. Joe, hello.
Hey, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I saw an interview last week with, I'm not sure if he was an economist or an accountant or whatever, but he had mentioned that this 30-day, gift that we've been from Trump.
Reprieve.
Yeah. He had mentioned that this was being done so that the Americans could kind of stockpile what goods they do get from Canada, because obviously we're under that threat again. And he basically said that, part of the reason is that the states can stockpile, what they need from us, and then, shut the door again. He had mentioned this 3 times, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was some bald guy with black glasses anyway. Yeah. But he had mentioned it, like I said, 3 times, and it's an interesting angle to kind of see it at, and perhaps that's part of the reason why we've got.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Maybe manufacturers who need lumber and whomever they might be stockpiling and purchasing and mass purchasing. That I'm not going to say that is. It makes sense on the surface, Joe. I don't know that the United States government is that coordinated. I don't know that Donald Trump is that coordinated. I'm not saying that he's not, but sure, that could make sense. You could sell me on that argument, Joe. I don't know that I'd 100% believe it, but it's certainly plausible.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously there's no fact to it, but
it sure makes some sense. If I were an American purchaser and I were building homes and I needed softwood lumber, Canadian lumber right now, I'd be buying a lot of it. That's for sure. That's a good point.
Steel or
or whatever. It's a valid point.
Yeah.
And that's okay, and that's fair. There's nothing untoward about that either, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I mean it's great that we got the 30 days, but yeah, I mean to say that, I mean obviously Trump's probably pretty aware that they've got fentanyl coming in from all sides of their their own borders, right? So I mean we're that's just I mean it's something that comes up in his Trump's brain, and there is I mean, we do need to tighten up some stuff. That's for sure. We've been lazy on a lot of things, you know. But you know, if that's kind of the secret reasoning for it, you know, I'm not sure. It just, when he had said it, I was just like, that actually kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, thanks for the call, pal.
All right. Thanks.
All
so
right,
much,
take
Todd.
care. You got it. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Hello, Carl.
Hey, Todd.
Hi there.
I'd like to weigh in on yesterday's topic there of booing, if that's okay.
Sure.
The U.S. has threatened to drop an economic nuclear bomb on Canada a week ago or so, and, you know, most of the leaders and everybody was calling it catastrophic and war, and he threatened to keep bombing us until we came crawling and begging him to allow us to join the U.S. The common sentiment at the time was to be strong, tough, and united as a country. Yet yesterday, in a matter of days, the majority of the callers in your show were saying that we are sucking and we shouldn't be booing the American anthems and that it's childish. We as a whole, we don't have a lot of stages or podiums to vent our frustration and to demonstrate our united front. So why not let us vent?
Well, you can vent if you wanted to. Nobody said that you couldn't, and I know that it's sucking is the term I would use. My argument was simply this: is that you can boo in Halifax on a Thursday night at a game. It's not going to make one bit of difference. Nobody who's making any decisions who have had anything to do with any of that are going to see or hear any of it. The only thing that does is in my opinion, shows poor sportsmanship and a lack of class at a game in which women are playing, and again, nobody there has any influence or any say, or any decision maker is going to hear any of it. So what's the point? That was my point. I don't think it's waving the white flag and giving up and saying everything's good now and all this problem's gone away. I just don't think that would be a positive, a net gain by booing during a national anthem at a women's international hockey game in Halifax on a Thursday night. That's all.
Well, I think it's pretty harmless compared to some of the rhetoric that's being pointed at us. And as far as the notion that it's not having any effect in the U.S., it made the U.S. news. He sees it, and more importantly, the U.S. people are seeing it. And the perception that, unfounded as it may be, that Canadians are polite and won't allow you just to walk all over us, we have to do something. We have to take advantage of our opportunities to stand firm.
Well, if standing up and going boo during a national anthem is your idea of doing something, then I guess we don't have a whole lot of options.
Well, anyway, that's my opinion.
Okay, thanks for the call.
Todd.
All right, 902-405-6000. Sure, we can do lots of things. There's lots of things that we can do. We can expand interprovincial trade. We can diversify markets. We can get off our butts and deal with this problem. But standing up at a hockey game in Halifax on a Thursday night, played by international women, and going boo, boo, and thinking you're helping in any way, shape, or form, I think it's just silly. Now, do you have the right to do that? Absolutely, you do. Is it cathartic in some way? Does it make you feel better? Okay, perhaps it does, but it's at the expense of other people. It's at the expense of the women who are playing. It's at the expense of other fans there, and I see it as a gaining nothing other than helping you make yourself feel better. 902-405-6000. Dan, hello.
Hi, Todd.
Hi.
The 51st state question, I think he's either bluffing or he hasn't really thought it through, because I did some checking, and In our last federal election, over 17 million of us voted. You contrast that with a big state like California, just under 16 million voted over there. And their population is a bit smaller than Canada, so we would actually have more electoral college votes than them, I think. And if you think about the resentment that would happen if Canada was absorbed, that would be kind of a gamble for the Republican Party. We could, in effect, be, the biggest swing state in their union, you see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that kind of resentment could keep the White House out of their reach for a generation. Who knows? So, it's a case of be careful what you wish for. That's what I'm saying. But anyway. That's...
Okay, Dan, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. Nathan, hello.
Hi, thanks for taking my call, Todd.
Sure.
I'm just calling, and I do agree, I'm not sold on Mark Carney yet. He's got a good resume, but I don't understand the, infatuation with Pierre. I understand being conservative, but Pierre uses slogans like axe the tax, and with Pierre now changing that up, it's now on to stop the drugs, which is echoing, the MAGA troop down south, which I think is dangerous. Mm-hmm. So I really don't get why Canadians are on board with Pierre. I think the Conservative Party needs better representation. Again, not sold on Mark, not a big Trudeau fan. I am a Liberal voter, but I'm not leaning that way right now.
Yeah.
But it's scary to see what's going on in the States.
Well, and I think Poilievre is reading that and recognizing that and knowing that there's only so much appetite for center-right. You can only go so far in this country. We know that we there's a threshold. And Nathan, you're raising some valid points in that how does Pierre Poilievre maintain his support, maintain his base, grow his tent, and not turn people off by appearing to be too far right and too extreme. So that's a balancing act, Nathan, for sure.
For sure. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Todd.
Thanks, pal. Take care. Joseph, hello.
Hi. How are you?
Well, you?
Good. Just wanted a quick shout out to answer your question around value for money with the councillors.
Okay.
I live in District 1. I think my counselor, who's Kathy Deagle-Gammon, does a fantastic job. I've never met her, never had a chance to talk to her. I just follow her on her Facebook and other social media. Mm-hmm. It's very evident she works very hard. Her days are full with the counselor meetings, her various portfolios where she has to meet with stakeholders, and meeting with city staff, and she keeps us all up to date through those social media platforms on what's going on. And then after hours, she then takes time to go out into the community and attend various events to meet with her constituents, and then also tries to help celebrate various holidays with them and honorariums. So I definitely feel that I'm getting very good value from Kathy. So I just wanted to put that
and then Joseph, look, you make some good points in that. And I've stuck up for counselors and politicians where others haven't, in that some of them work their tails off. And they're not easy jobs, and they take a lot of heat, and they are public property in many ways. And Joseph, I think you make a valid point in that. I think a lot of these counselors work very hard, and if people think it's easy, try and do it. That would be my response.
It is definitely not an 8 to 4 job.
No, that's for damn sure. Okay, thanks, Joseph.
No, you bet.
All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again on Monday. And speaking of counselors, we've got our counselors on the hot seat back on Monday. All right. Let's see, what do we get coming up next? Tom Urbaniack is a political science professor. I have him on the show from time to time from Cape Breton University. A nice guy, and he wrote a really heartfelt book. It's called You Are Loved. We'll talk with Tom about this when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, Tom Urbaniack joins me for a chat. You know Tom Urbaniack. He's a Cape Breton University political science professor, commentator, author as well. Tom, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure, Todd. Thank you.
All right, so thanks for sending me along your book. It's quite an emotional book, I must say. It's called You Are Loved, and I'm not sure that I want to describe what it's all about. When I have you on the line, I would let you perhaps describe what the book is all about in the subject matter, because it's very personal and very moving as well.
Thank you, Todd. You Are Loved is very different from my previous books. This one is addressed to my son, Oliver, my son, and Alison Etter's son, my wife, Alison Etter. Oliver turned 2 last February 11th. On February 14th, Alison passed away. She was suffering from serious complications from ulcerative colitis, recently diagnosed. She needed emergency surgery, and unfortunately, Alison did not wake up from the surgery. And Alison was a beautiful person in every way. Alison was a public figure in the sense that she was a United Church minister. She chaired the National Theology and Interfaith Committee for the United Church of Canada. So she thought a lot about big problems facing our world. But she never forgot about her neighbors in the broadest sense of that term. People who didn't have enough to eat, had nowhere to live, had no one to visit them in the nursing home. So Alison brought a deep spirit of solidarity, not only to her work, but to her life. And she kind of radiated that. There was a joy about her, despite the heaviness she often felt about the problems facing our communities and the world. And I wanted to convey some of that to Oliver in the 4 languages that Alison used in her ministry and in communicating with Oliver. And I wanted to convey it in a way that stands in contrast to the meanness of our time, the violence of our time, the degradation of the environment in our communities that we're seeing, and to just show that there is another way, and it's powerful, and that's the force of love. And so in that sense, the book, although it's a children's book and although it's addressed to Oliver, it might have some resonance for a broader audience, because I think it does have a deeper social message. All of the royalties are going to the Reverend Alison Etter Memorial Fund at the Atlantic School of Theology to support in-community projects. And I have to really acknowledge Alison's parents, her mom, Kathy, her dad, David, Alison's stepmom, Robin, for their love and support and for being close family and for supporting this project and so many other projects in which Alison and I have been involved.
All right, and we'd, of course, be remiss if we didn't talk about the incredible illustrations and the illustrator. So let everybody know about the illustrations, please.
Yeah, Tammy Krasnicki, who lives in Halifax, was the illustrator, and Tammy will be actually joining me tomorrow at 1:30 at the Spryfield Library for the reading. Tammy is a digital illustrator, so Tammy worked with countless, or was inspired by countless photos, but also by countless stories. So she really tried in a poignant way to bring out Alison's work and Alison's soul. And we went back and forth a lot, consulted with other people who knew Alison, and Tammy was just incredible to work with. So I can't say enough about that collaboration.
All right. So, what was it like to have to? Look, my condolences, obviously, which is it's got to be extremely difficult. What was it like has this been cathartic in some way for you to do this? Is it? I'm assuming painful, all types of emotions, and probably everything in between, eh?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was healing. I think what was really helpful was that a kind of sense of community developed around the project. In respect to consultations and translations, I worked with language experts in the 3 other languages in which the book is written, and they were just incredible. Bernie Levere, Katrina Parsons, Edita Bonchik, colleagues of Alison, of course, again, Alison's parents. And so there was a sort of bond that was strengthened around the project and now around the readings. And I'm learning new things about Alison as I go to the readings and as those conversations happened. People who knew her as a child. I've just been moved by stories, for example, of Alison in school, and people who have shared with me that they were in a situation where they were bullied, or they had no friend, or they thought they had no friends in school, and Alison decided that she would be their friend no matter what it would cost her. And yeah, that was the Alison I knew, and I still know.
Yeah. And how about your son and Oliver? And how does he react or respond to all of this?
Well, actually, the very first reading I did was at CBU daycare, where Oliver attends. And so I was seated, and as soon as the reading started, Oliver got up, and he wanted to hold the book. So actually, we were reading from 2 books. I was reading, and he was holding up the pictures. And he recognizes himself in the book. He recognizes his mamusia, which is Polish for mom. And he was just, proud to share that with his friends in daycare. So he understands on some level what has happened and what is now happening as we try to continue Alison's values and try to help her love to keep flowing in the world.
Absolutely. All right, so tell us about the reading tomorrow.
So that's at the Captain William Spry Library in Spryfield, and it will be at 1:30. There will be, I will actually read the book, or at least the English text, but happy to share some of the text in the other languages as well. And Tammy will be present, Tammy Krasnicki, the illustrator. We'll then have a little bit of a conversation where we will talk about the project, share some details about Alison that were maybe implied in the text, but not spelled out in detail. We'll talk a little bit about the Reverend Alison Etter Memorial Fund, which has grown thanks to the generosity of friends and people who have been touched by Alison. And already the fund is in a position to make grants to support in community projects. So the first call for applications has gone out, and there will be books offered for signing and sale at the Spryfield Library tomorrow at 1:30.
Okay, how do people get the book, Tom, if they're interested in it?
It is available through the online booksellers. It is also available through Breton Books, the publisher. So that's capebretonbooks.com. Of course, Indigo, Amazon, and in various independent bookstores in the province.
Okay, Tom, listen, I appreciate it very much. It's a very moving book, and good luck tomorrow, and let's keep in touch. Thank you, pal.
Thank you so much, Todd.
All right, take care. You get it. That's Tom Urbaniack. You Are Loved is the name of the book. Again, the book reading with the illustrator goes tomorrow at 1:30 at the Spryfield Library at the Captain Spry Center. Don Desserud when we come back. Don Desserud joins us for a chat, UPEI political science professor. Don Desserud, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your input as always.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
All right, so Canada's Advisory Council on Canada-U.S. Relations is hosting a summit today in Toronto. The Prime Minister opened up the summit saying, quote, "It's about time we had a genuine free trade in Canada." It almost looks as though Trudeau isn't aware that he's done in like 2 months or something like that. He looks reinvigorated or something. What's going on?
Yeah, he does, and he's done, but he's still the Prime Minister, and I think this is better that he's taking on responsibilities rather than being a lame duck that's sort of staying in the shadows. He has a job to do in some ways, and speaking to your point of being reinvigorated, now that he knows that what he does is not going to necessarily impact, his political fortunes, certainly one way or the other for the Liberal Party, but he's kind of off the hook, and he can start to do things that perhaps before he was reluctant to do because of the political price that he'd have to pay. Anyway, we'll see about that, but that could be why he's feeling, has a little lighter step these days.
Yeah, of course, it does impact the Liberals and the Liberal fortunes, and polling has them etching up ever so slightly, but an increasing nonetheless, and that's got to feel good for the Liberals to see those polling numbers going in the other direction.
That's right, and polling numbers are like that, right? It's always relative. You could be really high in the polls, and then you start to dip, and then people start saying, "Oh my God, something's wrong." You can be low in the polls, you start to going up, and you think, "Okay, this is terrific." So there's such a strong psychological factor to polling in terms of how it affects parties and their strategy. This last couple of last 2 weeks or so have been pretty good news for the Liberal Party, and you are right that they're inching up, but there has been some polls which I would take with some grain of salt, but that show them more than inching up, vaulting up, and so it'll be interesting to see what impact this has on Pierre Poilievre and his team, because they now are going to have to respond to that, and they have been a long time since they've been worried about their own polling numbers.
And of course, Poilievre kind of swinging for the fences now when it comes to some of these fentanyl, throw people in jail, and I'm not criticizing that, but it's really hard on, tough on crime, kind of playing to the base routine that it appears to me to be really trying to change the channel back to them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly, and as long as he had the tax issue to go after, and the unpopularity of Prime Minister Trudeau, he had a groove. He knew how to stay on message. We saw that when just after the Prime Minister announced that he was going to resign, that there was a lot of stumbling and fumbling on behalf of the CPC, seemed to try to find what they were going to do next. Then, of course, the whole question of the tariffs came in, and that seemed to throw them off. A lot of the raison d'etre for the CPC going back, a year ago or so, was basically the argument that everyone thought that the possibility of Trump coming into power was very good. If he did, which leader in Canada would be the one that could get along with him best, would be able to speak his language, would be aligned with him in certain ideological ways. And Poilievre was positioning himself as that person. Certainly Justin Trudeau was not and didn't want to. But now we see, the impact of the tariff threat and the rallying of Canadians, against such measures. And Poilievre suddenly realized that he was on the wrong side. So now he's trying to find something else that he can cling on to. I don't underestimate the ability of their strategic team to figure this out. But right now they seem to be floundering.
It's interesting, though, how they say politics, things can change in a hurry, right? It's just unbelievable when you think you might have something figured out or a game plan. That all gets thrown out the window in a hurry, and that's politics, right?
It is, and as you know, I've been following this very carefully, like literally my whole life, and I still get surprised, which is why I keep following it. It is so interesting to see how things can change so quickly, and fortunes can change. The Liberals are not out of the woods by a long shot, and we'll see. If Mark Carney seems to be the favorite right now, if he does win the leadership, we'll see how Canadians respond to him. Right now, what we're looking at is to see how the Liberal supporters are responding to him, and that's not exactly a fair measure. But who knows? It would be, to overuse a cliche, a whole new ball game with him as at the helm of the Liberal Party.
What are your thoughts on Chrystia Freeland and her chances here?
Not good, and I'm a little surprised because she is a very capable politician who I would assume has smart people advising her. I'm surprised that she's not played this better. She doesn't seem to know where to position herself, and where she has positioned herself just is not exactly working. She doesn't seem to be able to have a clear message. What Mark Carney is doing, and he was here on the island in Charlottetown on last Saturday, so a week ago. And I went down to see how he would do, and he addresses obviously a pro-liberal crowd. Three of the four Liberal MPs were there, in supporting him. He looks like a banker. He talks like a banker. Mm-hmm. He doesn't try to pretend he's not a banker, and that was going over very well. So basically, what seems to be working for him is the sort of the gravitas that he's a responsible adult, and I heard someone in the audience say that, it's about time we had an adult in the room. We need more adults around here, and so Freeland has to deal with that. Like, she needs to have that. She needs to show that she's got the gravitas, she's got the steadiness, and the clarity of message, and we haven't seen that from her yet.
Do you think that Parliament should be reconvened here, or is that argument kind of just going to go nowhere?
The reason why I don't think it should, normally I would say yes, but the reason why I don't think it should is because there's absolutely no reason to believe that the opposition parties, and particularly the CPC, are going to allow it to function. They're using points of order and points of parliamentary privilege, which have to be debated and dealt with first, and then they're filibustering on those to ensure that Parliament doesn't get anything done. So to suggest that if Parliament gets back together, they'll be able to come up with some amazing strategy and legislation to deal with the tariff threat doesn't fly when this is exactly the party that has been obstructionist in letting Parliament work. Proroguing is something is a tool you use sparingly, but one of the reasons why you prorogue is when Parliament is dysfunctional, and quite frankly, it has been dysfunctional. If they're able to come forward and say we want to work together because this is important, then sure. But if they're not going to, then it would be a waste of time. And frankly, I don't think we need an election right now. I think we need leadership that can present some strong ideas, and then yes, an election in the near future, but not right away.
And lastly, Jagmeet Singh, anything noteworthy can we say about Jagmeet Singh, or is it kind of just the same old routine?
Yeah, again, another person who doesn't seem to know what message he wants to send now. He had something going there for a while, but using clever language. At the first opportunity, he will propose a non-confidence motion, which, if you parse the language, means that he was not necessarily supporting the CPC, but he wanted to have his own. He was putting that far enough into the spring, so that it probably wouldn't have any real effect on Parliament itself. So and now what? He doesn't seem to be clear either. So this is a problem. I suspect that after the next election, we'll see a change in leadership there.
Okay, Don, always great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care. Don Desserud, UPEI political science professor. In the next half hour, we're going to talk sports with Cecil. We're going to talk to Aalders Aalders about the weekend weather and a few other things as well. We will be back. Joining us for a weekly chat is Allister Aalders, our weather specialist. Allister, hello.
Hi there, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
I'm good, thank you. Happy Friday.
Yes, indeed. Happy Friday for sure. So we have some weather on Sunday coming our way.
Yeah, not just the Super Bowl to talk about on Sunday, but a bit of snow too. Now, at this point, I mean, I think the headline is that it won't be anything too significant. I think we need to keep a very close eye on it, because if it were to nudge a bit farther north, we could get into higher snowfall amounts. But certainly compared to what some of the models were showing earlier in the week, the center of the system has been trending farther south and won't be as strong when it passes off of Nova Scotia. It's going to intensify close to Sable Island and pass off the Avalon, and it looks like parts of eastern Newfoundland will get into quite a significant snowstorm, maybe 20 to 40, some places upwards of 50 centimeters with blizzard-like conditions. But currently for Halifax and Nova Scotia, it looks like a more light snow event that will likely push into the western regions pre-dawn into Sunday morning, and it reaches Halifax Sunday morning. And most of the province gets into some light snow or flurries, but really not expecting a significant amount unless that track were to shift. For Halifax, it's looking like about 5 to upwards of 10 centimeters of snow. Can't rule out maybe upwards of 15. If it nudges just a bit farther north, it would take a significant shift northward to get, I think, more than 15 centimeters. But certainly it looks like the South Shore into southwestern Nova Scotia has the better opportunity for 10 to upwards of 15 centimeters of snow. And then as you move farther north in the province, amounts are going to drop off significantly. It's only, a trace to upwards of 5 centimeters locally as you move farther north in the province. So it's a bit of an inconvenience if you do have any travel plans on Sunday, but certainly at this point, not a significant storm. I would say that, it's going to be a storm, just not to the magnitude for us. I would say, though, that it's going to be cold. This is going to be a lighter, fluffier snow, and it's going to be coinciding with breezy northeasterly to northwesterly winds. So we are going to see, some blowing snow and reduced visibility, even though it's not necessarily a significant amount of snow currently in the forecast. We will be dealing with periods of reduced visibility and some blowing snow Sunday and Sunday night.
Okay, so those who may be traveling around the region, what any concern to people going to New Brunswick or coming back from New Brunswick? Or?
Well, I guess it depends on where you are. New Brunswick will avoid most of the system if it does stay on its current course. I think southern New Brunswick likely gets into some flurries and lighter periods of snow, but wouldn't be expecting at this point in time at least any more than a few centimeters to locally 5 centimeters there, and that's really going to be the case as you move across the North Shore. It's going to be farther south and west in the province, so parts of the Annapolis Valley, but especially through Digby, Yarmouth, the South Shore, Halifax, the Eastern Shore, and parts of Eastern Cape Breton that get into more of the accumulation. You are going to encounter some snow and blowing snow elsewhere in Nova Scotia, southern New Brunswick, and likely into PEI. But it's generally, fairly light, and as I mentioned, it tapers off from a lighter snowfall into more so flurries as you track, northward. So I'd say if you're traveling to Halifax, the closer you get, you'll encounter, snowier conditions and likely poor travel conditions. Same thing for the South Shore and the Annapolis Valley. That would include the Eastern Shore towards Cape Breton too. But generally right now, the North Shore, southern New Brunswick, and PEI, it's likely more lighter periods of snow or flurries. So I don't expect travel to be as impacted as it will be farther south and certainly west in the province.
So again, just to recap on the timeline on Saturday or Sunday, beginning when?
So if you're in the southwest, Yarmouth, South Shore, it begins before sunrise on Sunday. For Halifax, it likely begins, I would say, between 7 and 9. Still a bit of, uncertainty with the timing at this stage because the system itself really hasn't formed into a defined center. It won't until tomorrow night. And then it moves into northern and eastern areas of the mainland as we go, mid to late morning into the afternoon. Cape Breton gets into the snow in the afternoon and evening, and it's a fairly fast-moving system. So by Sunday evening, it looks like the bulk of the snow will be out of Halifax in the western half of the province, and then eastern areas as we go mid to late evening. There will be a few flurries behind the system, but overall it's pretty fast-moving. And it will be strengthening, as I mentioned, going to eastern Newfoundland. They're looking like they haven't had a significant snowstorm so far this winter, so this will be their first major snowfall for them.
Yeah, and of course with the snow, I mean, we've had a lot of that wet kind of mixture, and that makes for brutal moving of snow, shoveling and snow blowers, and so it's nice that temperatures will remain cold, and it'll be that fluffy stuff for a change.
Yes, it won't be that back-breaking snow, if you will. It won't be that sloppy mess that we're dealing with out there today. And I mean, I should note, I mean, a lot of it has been melting because of how warm it's been today, but any leftover slush and snow will be freezing up tonight, as we do see the temperatures falling back below freezing tonight, and we're going to be staying below freezing, right through the weekend into next week. So any standing water that's left due to the melting and any slush will be freezing up tonight. So if you can, best to clear that out of the way before temperatures do drop later today.
Okay, Alistair, appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll talk next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Allister Aalders, our weather specialist. And Sunday looks like a messy day weather-wise. When we come back, we'll talk sports with Cecil. We'll be back. All right, joining us to talk sports is Cecil Wright. Cecil Wright, hello.
Good morning, Todd.
Yeah, what's going on? So are you pretty pumped up over the Super Bowl, or where does this rank when it comes to your sporting events each year?
Oh, yeah, I go over to a friend of mine's house where a bunch of us have been getting together watching the game for the past 15 years or so, and we have a lot of fun, a lot of food, and a lot of orange juice, if you know what I mean, and just have a great time watching the game. And this is going to be a good one, man. I think a lot of people are just thinking like Philadelphia is going to roll over. Any team with Saquon Barkley in that offensive line has a chance. So I think this is going to be a great game.
Well, any team that gets to the Super Bowl, in particular out of the NFC, which is tough, is you can't take anybody lightly. You're there for a reason, right?
That's what I say.
Yeah.
But, everybody seems to think that Kansas City's not going to have much of a problem, with their three-peat. And I beg to differ. I think it's going to be a tough game. Probably comes down to a late field goal, a 3-point game. Even I think the spread is only like a point or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. What about the hype surrounding the Super Bowl? I mean, look, the biggest hype of any sporting event, probably, I would think, globally. Is it overdone sometimes, or what are your thoughts on the hype that is the Super Bowl?
Well, to me, it's all about the game itself. To a lot of other people these days, it seems like it's all about the halftime spectacular, which, I mean, Kendrick Lamar, he's a great talent and all that, but I'll be there watching for the football game, personally, and I know that all the guys that I'll be hanging around with, they will as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of been notoriously bad games, but I think the Super Bowl has really lived up to the hype the last number of years. I can't remember the last time there's been a real dog of a game. We've had some really tight ones, haven't we?
We have, and I think that makes it even more reasonable for people to tune in for the football itself. Now I know there are some guys I'll be watching with who will be waiting for the officials to make a mistake so they can jump down their throats. But I think all in all, for the most part, in the Super Bowl anyway, the officials have been decent. Now I can't say that so much about the regular season, but hopefully they'll have the best crew possible there for this game. And I think Jalen Hurts. Here's a chance for him to come out from behind the shadow of Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and all the other great quarterbacks in the league. You win the Super Bowl as a quarterback, and you just put a couple million more in your pocketbook when it comes to advertisements and sponsorships.
Indeed. So the three-peat is obviously the big story, but not exactly a marquee matchup here. I wouldn't call it that. What are your thoughts on the matchup itself?
Oh, see, you just stung me. I was just telling you how good I think Philadelphia is, and you're saying.
Well, I know, I get that, but I mean, it's not like a traditional matchup that you would go, wow, like Pats, whatever. Some of those matchups have been. Philadelphia and Kansas City don't have a storied history against each other. Is my point.
No, they don't. In fact, I don't even know if I think they might have played like once in the past 5 years because I can't remember Andy Reid playing against his old team, and that's another reason why this is such an intriguing matchup. Is because Andy in Philadelphia. I'm sure Andy Reid wants to win this game probably more than any other game he's ever coached. However, it's going to be difficult because Philly's good.
Is Andy Reid the best coach in the league? I would say probably strategically he would be, eh?
I don't know. I don't even think about who's the best coach in the league. Mm-hmm. How do you measure that? Is Sean McDermott in Buffalo, is he worse than Andy Reid? I don't know. He had a good regular season, had a great quarterback too. I don't know. I would say that he's probably, in the top tier of the coaches in the league. He's got, so much more experience than most of them as a head coach. And having coached in a difficult city like Philadelphia, that has to prepare him a little bit more.
All right, so what are your predictions on the game here on score, spread, and all that? What do you got?
I hate it when you ask me this question.
Well, of course I'm going to ask you. You got to prepare for it.
30-27 Philadelphia.
Really, eh?
Yep.
Why do you think it's going to be that high scoring?
Because I don't think that the Chiefs can stop Saquon Barkley. And if they are able to stop him in the running game, you throw him those quick little passes out in the flat, and no linebacker one-on-one is going to be able to hang with him. I think the Philly defense, even though they've given up a fair amount of points this year, so has Kansas City. So I think I'm going to cancel them out, the defenses, and I'm going to go with the offense. I think that Philadelphia will do a better job stopping Travis Kelce than Kansas City will stopping Saquon Barkley.
Okay. All right, let's shift gears a bit. I want to get your take on national anthems at sporting events, and there was a big an international game, a friendly between the United States and Canada here in Halifax. A packed house. No booing was going on during the Star Spangled Banner. Talked about this on the talk show yesterday quite a bit. What are your thoughts on national anthems and booing at national anthems to make some type of political statement or comment? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, two things. First of all, I don't even know why they play anthems before sporting events.
Yeah.
There's no correlation as far as I can see. And I can remember, back when I played in high school and in small college, I just wanted to get the game started.
Right.
So the anthem to me was just a pain in the butt because, you've got all this nervous energy in the first place. You see guys, who are just raring to get themselves out on the football field. Personally, if I had the power to call the shots, I wouldn't even be playing the anthem before a game. And second, that would eliminate all these types of things from happening. Booing during the anthem. And let's not forget, the reason why Canadians were booing the American national anthem is because Donald Trump, foolishly was talking about making Canada the 51st state, like he has the power to do so, number one, and thinking that Canadians aren't worthy of holding power and sway over our own dominion. And that's why people were booing the American anthem. It was booing Donald Trump more so than the anthem.
Yeah, but to that, the people who are there aren't responsible for any of that, and I mean, I was pleased to hear that yesterday that did not happen here in Halifax. I thought that would have been a bad demonstration of sportsmanship and lack class.
Nah, like I said, it's pointed in one direction, and you and I both know what direction it's pointed in. So if I was all Americans, I wouldn't be taking it as an absolute insult. It's aimed at your president, he's the one who opened up his yapper and was talking about how, let's just go grab Canada. Don't get me going on that guy. Jeez, just don't do it.
All right, buddy. Enjoy the game, and your prediction again is 27 what?
30-27 Eagles.
Okay, there you go, pal. All right, Cecil. Thanks, buddy.
All right, have a good one.
All right, take care. Cecil Wright, our sports guru. All right, and now it's time to talk to Clinton Wilkins, our mortgage guru. Clinton Wilkins, what's going on, man?
Hi, Todd. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. You watching the Super Bowl?
I will be watching the Super Bowl, maybe more so for the halftime show and all the snacks. But, I may not be a big sports guy, but there's nothing like a major league event, and this is the event of the event.
Yeah, there you go. And the snacks, and that's always a good time. All right, exactly. So speaking of good time, how about Mortgage 101? We recorded our show, and it's the Season of Love, and it airs on Saturday and Sunday from 11 until 1 on our radio station, and I think we, as always, produced a pretty good show.
I think it's an awesome show. And, we've been doing this show for 7 years, and every February we talk about, February, is the month of love, and we focus on love your home. And some people don't love their situation that they're living in. Some people want to become homeowners, and I think some existing homeowners want to also improve their property. That might be some renovations. Maybe they're going to refinance to pay for those renovations. And, I think 2025, there's going to be a lot of properties changing hands. I know realtors are thinking that we're going to see a 5% increase, at least in the amount of transactions. And I would bet, Todd, as soon as we continue to see these rates going down, and I mean, they've certainly been moving in the right direction, we're going to see a lot more activity in the marketplace.
Yeah, of course. And we cover always, like we do, a lot of different things. We had a guest on the show, very well spoken. Talk about that.
We did. We had a very interesting guest on. Previous Februaries, we've had realtors on, we've had contractors on, and just talking about, improving homes or buying a new home. But we did a little bit of a segue this February, and we talked about when love goes wrong. We had a family lawyer on and this is the first time in 7 years we've had a family law lawyer on our show. And we did a deep dive into the Nova Scotia Matrimonial Property Act. We also talk about what rights a married person would have if they're not on title. And we talk about things like domestic partnership versus being common law and what those implications are. We had Lee Davis on our show from MDW Law there in Halifax, and really just down the street from the studio. And she was kind enough to come in and share, some general legal information. It's a really great show for anyone who is thinking on buying a home or thinking about getting in a relationship or maybe getting out of a relationship.
Yep.
Lots of good information.
Yeah, and that's always the tough part of it, but it's important, and there are people out there who are thinking about, again, dissolving a relationship, and these are tough decisions to make, but you might as well make them with the right information and with an educated mind. That's always better, right?
I'd say go in with all the information, and I think one thing that really hit home to me that she said is some clients come to see her just as a fact finding. They haven't decided if they're getting separated yet or dissolving a relationship, but they want to know what those implications look like. I thought that was really interesting. And, I think the beginning of the year is a busier time for separations, at least where I'm sitting and doing mortgage finance. I think some people, fight it out, stay in over the holidays. And, the first of the year seems to be a busier time with people actually going through getting mortgage financing for separations and things. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can tell you, at least 40% of my files have a family law matter one way or another. And that might be a separation agreement or a court order or an order, dealing with these type of things all the time. And it can be complicated and it can be daunting. And I think it's a scary time for people. They're life changing. And, we know in this housing environment, if you have to sell a house and, buy another one, it can be challenging.
Indeed. Okay, so again, it airs on this radio station Saturday and Sunday, 11 until 1 or 11 till noon rather on both days. But if people for whatever reason check it, can't hear it live, then they can certainly get it on podcasts and through other vehicles. So let everybody know how people can digest and consume Mortgage 101.
They can certainly check it on our website. We put it out in a blog post format as well. It's on YouTube, and you can check us out on the website. It's teamclinton.ca/radio. All the links to our social accounts are on there as well. We make TikToks. We make Instagram Reels. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you would want to digest your podcasts. And it also lives here on the 95.7 News Radio website as well.
Okay, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for teeing it up, and we'll be listening because it's always fun to listen to it, isn't it?
That's right. It's a great thing to do on a Saturday or Sunday when you're driving around. And you know what? We sound pretty good on the FM, I think.
We'd sound good on the AM dial as well, but we're not on AM. But we'd sound good on AM also.
Exactly. Happy Friday, Todd, and have a great weekend.
Okay, take care, pal. Clinton Wilkins, our mortgage guru. Again, Mortgage 101, your guide to home ownership, airs from 11 until noon on Saturday and Sunday on this radio station. Hope you have yourself a great weekend, everybody. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness, of course, as well on the other side of the glass, doing a fine job. As always, we are back on Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.